their numbers for first choice placements. And so there's some things that we're trying to put in place on the front end to address that. So for example, facilities is has a huge impact on that. If you only have one lab, let's say, in a building, then you can only accept that amount of students. So already we're starting to see where the high interest programs are, and if that facilities plan that I mentioned, already started redesigning those plans to include more labs for, let's say, that particular academy because of the interest in that academy to help be able to position ourselves to give students their first or second choice. And I know Montgomery struggled for some years to get students from that second choice up to the first choice. Like that's a metric that they look at every year, like how many percentages of students get their first choice.
We'd like to try and stay to our time, so if we can just take one more group question and then wrap it up officially, and then afterwards if people have any specific questions, then we can go from there.
Two last questions. Will the county provide transportation for any school in your cluster? And then, what will the process be to move your student from one school, say you belong to one of the other schools in the cluster? You know, will I have to go to the school board, or will that just be simple going to the office of the school, or how will it?
So the first is about transportation. We had a transportation task force that's a joint task force between the school system and the county government. And so some of you may have already heard that we changed our transportation system this year. So that was the first step. Then we changed it such that some of our middle school students will also ride school buses with high school students because that reduced the transportation costs. At the same time. So that's happened not across the board, but in certain schools. We've also looked at other ways to create efficiencies in the transportation system. I don't know about you, other folks who maybe live in the area. I know out of my corner, I see at least 7 buses go by every morning. And so we have to do a better job of using the resources that we have. And so the next phase of their work is actually looking at high schools and how we provide transportation at our high schools and consulting with other districts that have been able to do it successfully. What we've seen in some areas is students go to their boundary school, their neighborhood school, and then a bus meets them there and takes them if they're assigned for another school. Other counties do it where there's a hub and everyone kind of comes to a hub and gets on the bus and takes them to whatever school they're assigned to. So there are a few different models, and as Michelle was mentioning earlier, we have a few years, and so we're trying to determine which model is going to not only be cost effective, but which model also addresses the needs of parents. And so I would imagine we have, just as we had several meetings about what we're going to offer in general, we'll probably have several community meetings around the transportation structure for that, as well as that time draws closer. In terms of students, in terms of how do you determine which program that you'll be able to be a part of, we're looking at having that application process, where as an 8th grader you would indicate these are the programs that I'm interested in, and then you would go to a school based on the choices that you've indicated. Again, with that work that's why the work of the professional school counselor is vitally important, so that you're making somewhat informed choice. Not that necessarily you'll end up doing that for the rest of your life, but at least you have something to back up besides, I get from girls, I want to do hair. You know what I mean? Like kind of going beyond that to, what is it that you're interested in? And these are the career fields that match that interest.
Are Bowie and Roosevelt also converting to this model?
They are.
But they'll still have the programs they've always had, right? So will they still have the science and tech, and they'll still have the...
So Roosevelt will still have science and tech, but Bowie doesn't have any tested in programs at this point.
But they have a STEAM program? Don't they have a STEAM?
Yeah, so we'll have to look at the tested in programs will continue to remain. If it's not a tested in program, then they'll be converted to the academy model. And we try to look at programs, again, which were already going on in schools to build upon that model so that we're building upon the resources in terms of staff, expertise, resources, the familiarity with the program. So, for example, I think Roosevelt is slated for the Engineering and Science Academy. That makes sense, right? They also are slated for business and finance because people may not be aware, but they also have a very strong business program at that school as well. So we try to look at the strengths already in the school building to determine which academies would be most appropriate for that building.
So if the academies are built on a 4-year platform, and you already have students maybe in 11th grade, you're implementing an academy newly in the school.
Yeah.
How kids who have already been in the school benefit from the academies that are being implemented for the newcomers?
That's a good question. So, particularly our 11th and 12th graders, what they're going through is kind of what you could say the old CTE model, which is typically a 2-year program. But they benefited in the sense that, especially if they're getting an academy relevant to a program they already offer. So, the business and finance program, let's say at a school, if you have 11th and 12th graders, I'm thinking of Suitland in particular this year. We had opportunities that were really more geared towards 11th and 12th graders at our university. So we took our 9th, 10th graders on some of those opportunities, and other times we were able to say, hey, well, we have these students who are participating in the program as 11th and 12th grader who can take advantage of this some other opportunity that we don't have students ready for just yet. So we've had a few instances where that's occurred as well. So I would say it comes more on the experiential learning side of it, as well as the teacher training and expertise. So those teachers in that building are also getting increased training in particular career fields for their teachers.
So does that mean that when you're introducing new academies to different schools, that you're starting with the 9th graders and then you're growing it
correct
year by year?
Yes, correct. I will say one exception to that a little bit is some principals have gotten really enthusiastic and decided we're going to try to go all grades homeschool, and so I kind of do it on a case by case basis. Actually, I could do all in that category, but they got really excited, and so in those cases, we're trying to provide additional support to the school so that they can actually truly implement the model. Because part of the benefit of going year by year is that you have to train the staff, you have to build the culture among the parents and the students and all that as well, and the expectations of the program. So.
Makes a lot. I mean, that's how charter schools grow. I mean,
yeah, we try to be thoughtful about the process.
Well, yeah, you don't want your school going rogue, and then
right. Every now and then we have a rogue school, but so far it's been implementing pretty well.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you, Lateefa, for taking your time to come and tell us all of this. This is very exciting.
Fun to do.
And I'm sure we will all have a lot more questions to ask of you.
And I'm sorry I didn't get to some of the tested programs, but I did include some information there about the Academy of Health Sciences and the Science and Technology program as well. Which, in case you don't know, we're offering testing during the school day. We started that this year for the first time, which has been we've seen a tremendous increase in the number of students that have taken the test for those programs. So let folks know to be on the lookout for the upcoming school year. They can actually take the test as it's offered during the school day. It's less of a burden on parents when we get them to a testing site on Saturday.
I just want to say one thing. I mean,
Yeah.
to me,